Hey guys, it's Dr. May. How are you? I hope you're good. I'm excited to show you this lesson today because I'm sure for some of you, this is the moment you've all been waiting for. All you radically open DBT nerds out there, because flexible mind adopts has been appearing in earlier skills in the curriculum. And I kept saying, wait till later, I'm going to do the videos in order, right? So here it is, flexible mind adopts. And it's really useful because we all get feedback continuously in one form or another. And if we're very closed and we're over-controlled, we particularly have a hard time accepting the feedback. So this lesson's all about being more open to feedback and determining whether we should accept it or not. Okay, so stay tuned. You got a lot of good stuff today. All right, so this is chock full of cool stuff that I hope you'll like and find useful. All right, there we go. Flexible mind adopts. All right. So thumbs up or thumbs down. Sometimes even a thumbs up feedback can be hard, right? We struggle accepting compliments sometimes. We don't feel we deserve it, right? But anyway, here we go. So be open to feedback. Why bother? Okay, so why should I learn this lesson anyway? Well, feedback occurs all the time, like I was saying before. And people who are really successful in their life, like highly successful people, are really good at accepting feedback because they know they don't know everything. They know that other people might see their blind spots and have useful things to share, right? So if we keep our ears open and we're receptive to what other people are trying to tell us, we can actually learn a lot, okay? And if we take the feedback into account and we try to apply it in our life, it just helps us grow and get so much better, okay? So it's really, although it's a little stressful to accept feedback and listen to it, the rewards could be really big, okay? So if we can work through that discomfort, you know, the payoff is going to be good for us, all right? And sometimes, like I said in the bottom, you could learn the most from the stuff you don't want to hear. Sometimes the most painful feedback is the most useful feedback. So just because it hurts, it doesn't mean it's wrong, okay? So we got to stay open even if we're uncomfortable. All right, so here's some just reflection questions, okay? Because we've all obviously had feedback before. So, and we've all struggled with it. So just think for yourself, can you remember a time when you resisted feedback at first, but then you tried it out and you actually found that the new way of doing things was more effective than what you were doing before, right? Maybe someone suggested you try something new and it was a little scary because we don't like change all the time, but you know what? They had a point. It worked out, right? And what about this? Can you remember a time when you listened to someone else's opinion and it turned out to be helpful? Okay, similar idea. And now we're going to flip it around, right? So let's put ourselves in the other person's shoes because we also give feedback to other people, right? And sometimes it's hard for us to give feedback because we struggle with their response to us, right? Because when they're not open, it kind of doesn't reinforce us for wanting to give the feedback, right? So when you're giving feedback to someone, right, what is it about their behavior that tells you that they're being receptive or open, right? So how are they socially signaling? What kind of things are they saying? And, you know, what kind of actions do they engage in when they're listening to us, right? So that's huge because we gotta imagine both sides, right? And it helps us to be more open to other people's feedback when we remember what it feels like to give others feedback ourselves, okay? So it helps us to kind of calm down and be more receptive to them when we remember that. All right, so when you imagine somebody, like let's say you gave them feedback, okay, and they're being open to what you had to say, does that increase or decrease your positive feelings toward that person? All right, chances are you're gonna say it increases the positive, you know, feelings you have because we feel kind of validated or, you know, when people listen to us and we feel like, oh, good, I had something useful to say. I'm glad I was able to contribute. All right. So sometimes it helps the relationship, you know, it makes me feel useful. And when we do this to others and we're open to them, they feel useful. They feel like they're helping us, contributing, right? And it could kind of help us connect sometimes. All right. So like the bottom question, I kind of answered it a little bit, but how might such openness positively influence relationships? Okay, so not only can you actually gain some useful information from the feedback you're receiving, but just by being open to it can help you connect better and have a better relationship with the other person. So that's like a bonus, okay? So let's think about that. All right, so now we're gonna move into the acronym ADOPTS, okay? Because we're gonna try to adopt new feedback and perspectives from other people, okay? So that's how you can remember that. So we'll start with the A of ADOPTS. So first, we have to acknowledge that some painful feedback is occurring, right? So, you know, you're talking to somebody, they're giving you some feedback, and you say, oh, here it is, it's happening. I'm getting this painful feedback, here it is, right? And I mean, we have to remember, feedback can come in different forms, right? So sometimes it's verbal, it's something somebody's telling us in one form or another. Other times it's nonverbal, like a look we're getting from somebody, or even like a honk of a horn from the car behind us when we're driving too slow. Or it could be situational, right? So, you know, just the way other people are responding to us, or, you know, things like that. And it could come from other people or just like the world in general, all right? So let's ask ourselves some self-inquiry questions, all right, to kind of help us acknowledge the painful feedback if it's occurring. So how skillful do I believe I am at being able to notice unwanted feedback? Like, can you actually be aware of it in the moment and step back and notice that this is occurring, right? Or are you just so lost in it, you're not even registering, okay? How aware am I of my habits for avoiding, blocking, or minimizing unwanted feedback? Right, so sometimes it's like this automatic reaction, right? We get the feedback, we're really uncomfortable, and we start getting all defensive, we get into fixed mind, okay? So what might this mean? Let me look at my defenses, right? Let me look at my reactions. What is this saying about me? What is this saying about the relationship? And of course, what is it that I might need to learn from the way I'm responding, or the situation itself, or the feedback? Okay, so now we're on the D of ADOPTS, okay? So we recognize that the feedback's occurring, and now we're going to tune into ourselves a little bit more, okay? So we're going to describe and observe emotions, body sensations, and thoughts, okay? So that's like all the stuff that's going on within us as the world or the person or people are giving us feedback, okay? So let's do some more self-inquiry, shall we? Okay, so am I talking more quickly? Immediately jumping to respond to the other person's feedback or questions, right? So it's a sign of being anxious, you know, like, oh my God, they're saying something, I got to, right? Ever notice you're doing that? I know I've noticed that for myself too. Do I feel a strong desire to explain myself, perhaps while I'm talking quickly? Okay, so sometimes when we get in a vulnerable situation, they're pointing out something we may not have done that well, we want to defend ourselves, right? Am I noticing that I'm trying to explain myself? Physical reactions now. Am I holding my breath or breathing more quickly? What is that a sign of? Racing against reality, holding my breath, breathing more quickly, some anxiety, right? Has my heart rate changed? Is it speeding up because I'm getting nervous? Okay. Or is it like an overwhelm response? Am I feeling numb or emotionally shut down? Right? So sometimes I'm like so freaked out by it that I just like, oh, right? That could be another response too. Am I automatically blaming the other person or environment for my reactions, right? So instead of looking at myself, I'm getting mad at them for even pointing out my flaws. How dare you, right? I'm focusing my energy on like an attack response. Okay, and then afterwards, let's say, okay, I was sitting down with the person, I got this uncomfortable feedback, I left the situation, it's over. Later on, am I now ruminating about all this, right? Do I keep running it through my mind and brooding about what happened, maybe more so than I would during a normal interaction with a person, okay? So what's that a sign of, right? Maybe I'm upset about it, maybe I'm feeling vulnerable, defensive, maybe I'm trying to explain it in my mind, thinking of what I'm gonna say, right? All signs of like, you know, some defensiveness and fixed mind and stuff like that, okay? Another, just to refer back to another Radically Open DBT video, after Flexible Mind Proves, which is about, you know, being assertive, there's a section afterwards that I included about ruminating after an interaction. So if you want additional self-inquiry questions about that, you can refer back to that video or your skills book, okay? All right, so more for D for in the ADOPTS, okay? Describing emotions, body sensations, and thoughts. Okay, so here's a passage that I copied from the skills book, okay? And I kind of liked it because I feel like a lot of us can relate to it, okay? So I'm gonna read it to you. So when someone says something I strongly disagree with, my body is incapable of registering anger or annoyance. At first, there's instant denial. I tell myself that I'm not bothered and feel a sort of numbness. Usually I agree and go along with what they're saying, but inwardly, I'm silently shouting, no! I pretend everything is okay, right? So sometimes, you know, if I don't know if you guys could relate to it, but like you might be really uncomfortable with the feedback, suffering on the inside, but you're trying to still put on a good face on the outside to be polite, but you're really struggling with it. And it's hard for you to communicate what you're really feeling to that person, right? So that's where things like flexible mind is deep comes in, and revealing what we're really feeling, you know, in a way that the person can hear sometimes, all right? But, you know, this is like a reaction we might have, right? Okay, so now we're on the O of ADOPTS, okay? So we'll be open to the new information, open to the new information by cheerleading and fully listening. Okay, so you don't need to get your pom-poms out, but basically they're saying like, kind of like give yourself some encouraging self-talk to kind of stay with it and try to open yourself up to what they have to say, okay? So first, right, I'm recognizing the feedback's occurring, then I'm kind of tuning into myself and what's going on with my reaction, and now I'm trying to be open to what they have to say, okay? So this is a pretty challenging part because I'm trying to let go of some of my defenses. Instead of staying closed, I'm gonna say, all right, let's check it out, okay? So first thing we could do, as usual, is the big 3+1 skills, okay? So we create social safety by our body language, right? So we're showing them that we're receptive, and it also helps us feel more safe, right? So instead of feeling really vulnerable and like we're being attacked, it communicates to our own brain that we're more okay, all right? So definitely try this out. So just a quick refresher, right? So the +1 is sitting back in your chair if you're sitting. Then you take a deep breath, right? So instead of breathing quickly like we talked about before, you're gonna try to, all right, right? And I've found personally, it does help to listen to somebody saying some difficult stuff if you slow down your breathing, right? Just like stay with your breath, try to stay calm, all right? Use closed mouth cooperative smiles and eyebrow wags, all right? So it shows some kind of like cooperative friendliness. Okay, so you show you're listening, right? So next part, practice fully listening, okay? I heard a term once which I really liked called agendaless listening, right? So you're not listening with the agenda of like, what am I gonna say back? How am I gonna defend myself? You're just listening for the sake of listening, right? And when you listen to somebody, that's a great way to show validation, as we talked in the validation video, right? Just being open to what they have to say. And it's good for relationships for sure. So just allow the other person time to speak, even if you're uncomfortable. Try to show that you're listening by nodding your head or perhaps even reflecting back what they have to say. All right, so just show with your body language that you're trying to listen, okay? Breathe, okay? Make sure you breathe. Try to let go of assuming that you know what they're gonna say, right? So that's kind of closing yourself off instead of opening yourself up. And again, one thing that could help give you the incentive to stay open and cheerlead you to stay open is to remember that even if it's uncomfortable, they still might have something to say that's worth listening to, right? Because other people see blind spots we don't see. So even if you don't like their delivery, chances are they might say something that could be potentially useful. So really important to stay open, okay? Listen for that kernel of truth. All right, so we're still on open, all right, for the O for ADOPTS. All right, so as I was mentioning fixed mind before, it's common to respond to painful feedback with fixed mind, okay? Fixed mind is lesson 11 if you want a review of that. But basically, you know, it's close you off because you're going to defend yourself. You're trying to rebut what they say. You might kind of answer a question with a question, bring up old hurts and injuries, kind of like throw something bad back at them instead of listening to what they have to say to you, right? Or demanding that they hear you before you listen to them. Okay, so all that's like pushing the person away. It's damaging the relationship. And it's preventing you from learning something here, right? So we gotta like try to let go of some of this fixed mind, okay? Another thing we have to remember that will help us in this process is not to like catastrophize this whole thing, right? Just because they're pointing out, let's say you did something wrong or you need to do something better, it doesn't mean you're a bad person. It doesn't mean everything about you is bad. It doesn't mean the world's gonna come to an end. You just did one thing wrong, okay? So you could fix it. There's always another chance, right? All right. And it also doesn't mean they necessarily hate you, okay? Sometimes it feels like the relationship's going to be destroyed because they found this flaw in me, and how could they possibly love me? But that's not always the case, all right? So let's not exaggerate. Stay with what's going on. All right. And also, just by listening to feedback, you're showing the person you're listening, right? It helps with the relationship. You might learn something, but you don't necessarily have to agree. So you can listen and evaluate the feedback without having to necessarily agree with the feedback. So it doesn't mean you have to be like, oh, I'm not gonna listen unless I agree. Well, you don't even know what you're agreeing to yet. Okay, sometimes you think you know what they're gonna say, but you don't know. Okay, so more with the O for open. There's a lot of openness here because this is radically open DBT, right? So we could show we're open by the way we're communicating to them, right? So first we're opening by listening, right? Then we could show openness by our response. So we could use the awareness continuum language to show that we're open, right? And to take responsibility for our responses, okay? So that's described in more detail in the what skills, which I believe is lesson 12, okay? But anyway, so the awareness continuum language is used in these phrases here. So I'm gonna read this example for you. So the guy says, let's say they're having a difficult conversation and maybe his girlfriend is giving him some difficult feedback about the relationship or something he's doing, okay? So he says, oh, I'm sorry, husband. Well, all right, so his wife is telling him that. I forgot what I put down in the bubble, okay? All right, so he's saying, I'm aware of imagining that you think I'm a bad husband. So he's being honest about how he's actually feeling about the feedback. So instead of hiding it and pretending he's okay when he's not, he's using the awareness continuum to tell her what he's really thinking and feeling. Okay, so I'm aware of imagining you think I'm a bad husband. I'm aware of thinking that I'm having difficulty listening to you right now. Yes. I'm aware of thinking I'm not understood. I'm aware of a feeling of fear as I listen to your point of view. Oh, doesn't that capture it, right? I mean, a lot of times we feel and think all those things, but we never say it out loud, right? So this is actually like sharing like the little details of all the stuff that you normally hide, right? So this is really being open. Holy cow. And sometimes when you actually say stuff like that, doesn't it make you feel like, wow, I really respect this guy for being so honest, right? You know, you don't think, oh God, what's the matter with him? Why is he telling me that? You're thinking, gee, well, wow. Thanks for, you know, sharing how you feel about what I had to say, okay? All right, so more openness. So we're just gonna shift it for a second, right? So sometimes the feedback we get from friends or people we're in a close relationship with comes in the form of playful teasing, okay? So I don't mean like, you know, bully on the playground teasing, which is kind of mean. I mean like, you know, when friends tease each other, right? So look at the pictures I put there, right? So like when you kind of joke around, all right? So here's how they describe a tease. And I think this is kind of a cool description and pretty accurate. So according to radically open DBT, a kind tease momentarily introduces conflict and social distance, but quickly reestablishes social connectedness for appeasement and non-dominant signals, right? So maybe you say something a little seriously at first, which might make the person a tiny bit nervous, but you quickly turn it around by being kind of lighthearted, right? All right, so that's the key to a playful tease. And I'll give some examples in a sec. All right, so playful teasing is how people give each other feedback without making it a real big deal, okay? So you're kind of lighthearted about it, you know, easy manner, as we've talked about before in other videos, okay? So you could tell somebody something a little critical without making it a big deal, and you're kind of communicating with your lightheartedness that, you know, I don't think you're a bad person. I'm still in this relationship. We're still having fun, even though you did this dumb little thing, okay? So here's some examples of what people provide feedback about using a tease. So minor violations of social norms, such as burping out loud, like, whoa, look at that little piggy over there. Oh my goodness, woo, right? So you say it in a silly way, but you're kind of also giving them feedback about that crazy loud burp they just did, for example. Okay, small mistakes, such as making a mess. Oh boy, I guess there's a trail of popcorn around. I won't get lost in my living room tonight. I'll just follow the trail to the kitchen, right? So maybe if it's said in a certain way, it's kind of playful, right? Inappropriate behavior, such as being a little greedy. Like, uh-oh, look who just finished all the Doritos. Right? Okay, so it's feedback, but kind, right? Okay, and they say that, if, let's say you're in a friendship with somebody and you're able to tease them and they're able to tease you, okay? And you're both able to take it in a light way and not overreact to it, and you understand the intent is playful, it actually could create some social bonding, right? It could make you feel closer to the person, and it takes a certain amount of trust to be able to laugh and play with each other, right? And to kind of laugh together. So it actually could be a positive thing. And also, it helps sometimes us not take life so seriously. Like if we can laugh at our mistakes and, be kind of okay about it because I'm able to accept the tease. It prevents me from being too serious and too perfectionistic and too hard on myself, right? So it could be a positive thing. All right, so now we're finally at the P of ADOPTS, okay? We're getting closer to the end. So I'm getting this feedback from somebody, right? So now I'm trying to pinpoint what it is that they're pointing out to me. What is it exactly that they think I should do different, right? Sometimes it's very obvious. Other times it's a little more disguised in what they're saying, okay? This could be a little rough if they're vague, or if they're digging up all kinds of stuff from the past, or they're all over the place giving different details about different things, or if they're saying it in a nasty way, right? So sometimes this could be a tricky conversation, and it's hard to get to the point of what they're trying to tell you. But just because they're saying it to you perhaps in an emotional way, or in a way that's hard to hear, it doesn't mean that they still don't have anything useful to tell you, right? So sometimes they just are really frustrated and they don't know how to get it out in a kind way. Maybe they haven't learned a whole lot of radically open DBT or regular DBT, right? So you just got to try to find, okay, how could I pinpoint the main point here? What's the kernel of truth? Okay, you might have to ask them to clarify, ask them a question or two, make sure you got it right, repeat it back to them, okay? Because it helps the relationship if you take into account the feedback, right? So if my husband's telling me I'm being a little messy in the kitchen, I just want to be clear on, like, what is it about the messiness in the kitchen? Do I need to sweep the floor a little bit more? Do I need to wipe the counters a little bit more? Should I make sure the dishes are done before we go to bed? Should I make sure that I'm putting dishes away after they're already in the dishwasher washed? Like, what is it about the mess? I just want to be clear, okay? So maybe he's saying, what are you doing? You're making a whole big mess in here. Okay, so just tell me what it is, okay? All right, so just reflect it back, be clear about it. And if you're responsive to it, the other person feels heard, right? Okay, and also, if it gets a little heated, no problem. You could take the heat off by just suggesting maybe we should cool down first and take a break, and then come back to it when you're both a little calmer. All right, so no big deal, just kind of pace it a little bit. Okay, so we're taking a little break from the ADOPTS for a second, okay? And this part is really useful, okay? So there's 12 questions, and you could kind of check off your little answers for these, because at the end you could determine if you're accepting the feedback or not based on how many yeses you give versus nos, all right? So if you're not sure if you should take into account the feedback you're getting, or if it's useful feedback, you could run some through these questions, right? And it could help you come to a conclusion and an answer, all right? And you could also run it by a friend as well, or somebody who's a little objective about the situation, okay? But here's just a guide for you. So let's go over it. So 1, does the person have more experience than I do in this area? Okay, so let's say, I'm getting some advice about using computers, okay? And I'm getting advice from a guy who's really good at computers, and he knows a lot more than me. So if he's giving me feedback about some better way to use a program, or a different program to use, or better virus software, I may want to listen to the guy, right? Because he's obviously pretty knowledgeable, right? Other times feedback has nothing to do with the person being more experienced, right? Like if someone tells me I'm being messy, it doesn't mean that they have more experience in being neat. It just might mean they observed my mess, right? So it doesn't always matter, but sometimes this question matters. But if it doesn't matter, just say no if you're answering this question. All right, so number 2, will accepting the feedback help maintain or improve my relationship with the person giving me feedback? Okay, So this is kind of as we touched on before. So if it's coming from a boss, a coworker, a friend, a partner, a kid, and accepting it makes them feel heard and validated, it might be worth at least considering it, okay? Other times feedback comes from people with whom you have no relationship, right? So if I'm riding in a New York City cab and the cab driver gives me feedback about my luggage or something, it may not matter to my relationship with this guy because I may not see the guy again, okay? Or if it's a store clerk or something in a store I almost never go to, I may not need to keep a relationship with that person. It may not matter if I take it or not. Okay, you see what I'm saying? All right. So number 3, will accepting the advice help me maintain or improve other important relationships? So for example, let's say I have a friend who's telling me that I tend to interrupt her too much when we're talking, okay? I get excited about things and I jump in and I interrupt, and she's saying, I really don't like it when you interrupt me. So that feedback, if I take it, not only could help my relationship with my friend, but if I apply it to other relationships and other conversations I have with people, it might help those too, right? Because, gee, if it's a habit I have of interrupting people, maybe it's also bothering other people, but they just never told me yet. So I could just take that advice and use it across various situations, and it could help me in ways I may not even realize yet. Okay, see how that goes? Okay, number 4. Am I discounting the feedback to purposefully displease or punish the person? Kind of spiteful, right? So sometimes, if you have a strained relationship with the person, it's hard to accept their feedback because you don't like where it's coming from, right? If you have a coworker or a boss that pisses you off and they tell you what to do, you may just want to not do it just because you don't like that guy, right? But they still might have something to say, even if you don't like that person. So you're kind of cutting off your nose to spite your face, so to speak, if you don't take the feedback, because, maybe they actually had something to say, right? Okay, number 5, if necessary, am I capable of making the changes that are being suggested, right? A lot of times the answer might be yes. Maybe I don't want to do it. Maybe I'm afraid to change, or maybe I actually can do it. Or maybe with some work or practice, I could actually accomplish that, okay? So just something to consider. Number 6, will accepting the feedback help me steer clear of significant problems, such as financial loss, employment difficulties, problems with the law, right? So if someone's trying to give me feedback, let's say about an anger problem that I have, that might really help me in a variety of situations, right? It might keep me out of trouble at work. It might help my relationships with my friends and my partner. It might even keep me out of trouble with the law if my anger's really gotten out of control, right? So if someone's telling me that, maybe I should take it into account, right? They're trying to help me. Even though I don't like to hear it, maybe it's actually going to help me in a significant way. Okay, number 7. Was the person providing the feedback using a calm and easy manner? Okay. So like I was saying before, sometimes it's easier to reject feedback if the person's delivering it in a way that's hard to hear. Like if they're being a little nasty about it, or they're yelling at me while they're giving it to me, or they're very emotional, or they're calling names or something like that. So if that's the case, I could understand, it might be hard for me to hear that feedback, Sometimes people could deliver it in a calm and easy manner, but just what they're saying is so upsetting that I'm getting really emotional. So this should really be something that's objective, right? So if a friend was with me watching that person give me feedback, would they also agree that the person was using a calm and easy manner? Or would they say, oh, this person's nuts, he's really getting off out of control while he's talking to you, okay? So that's kind of the guideline for this one. All right, number 8. Does the feedback refer to the actual situation I'm in as opposed to the past or the future? All right. So if someone's talking about my job performance right now, that's much more relevant to me than if they're pointing out a flaw I did, some mistake I made 5 years ago. Okay. If it's relevant and it's happening right now, it's much, it should be something I should probably pay attention to more, because maybe the old thing is already fixed, or it's a moot point, right? Or even the future, right? Like if it's something I'm not even there yet, or it's not even it could be a possibility, but it may not even happen. Yeah, we'll have to see. Not as relevant. All right, number 9. Am I in a long-term caring relationship with this person? Okay. Sometimes it's hard to hear feedback from people we're close to, and sometimes it makes us respect the feedback more because we respect the person, right? So this one could be a little tricky, but sometimes, like I was saying before, if you are receptive to it, it helps the relationship, right? Ever try to give someone feedback and they keep blowing you off and it feels like you're not even listening to me, right? You don't want to do that to other people. All right, number 10. All right, number 10 is the feedback I'm being given something that I've heard from others before. All right, so if my grandma over there tells me I complain too much, I say, all right, so good, so it's grandma. Then my uncle tells me I complain too much, and my sister tells me I complain too much, and my friends tell me I complain too much. Gee, maybe they're not all making it up. Maybe they're seeing something in me that's kind of happening a lot, right? Maybe I should take it into account, okay? So if you're hearing it multiple times across different situations and people, it's definitely worth paying more attention to. All right, number 11, am I tense or frustrated about this feedback? Okay, so that's like kind of like the D, the describe and observe, you know, your own reaction to it. You know, if you're getting tense about it, it's kind of hitting a nerve perhaps, but doesn't mean it's not useful, right? Just means it's making you feel a little vulnerable, okay? Number 12, last question. Am I saying to myself, I know I am right, no matter what the other person says or how things seem, right? You folding your arms across your chest, being really close to it, being in fixed mind, okay? Chances are you're not right about everything, so you may not be as right as you think, right? We got to be humble. Remember, we don't know everything. Other people might see things about me that I don't see. Okay, so declining the feedback. So if you get a score of 4 or lower, okay, 4 or lower yeses, by the way, okay, you should probably decline the feedback. That means like you're not hitting most of those points. It may not be that useful, okay? So if you choose to decline the feedback, that's okay. You don't have to do everything everyone's telling you, okay? So just determine whether or not you're going to tell the person you're going to decline the feedback. It may not really be appropriate to do it, but sometimes you might want to let them know, especially if they're kind of like waiting for a response from you or if it's somebody closer to you. So also, it may not be your final decision. Like right now, you might feel like declining the feedback, but if you consider the matter a little bit more, you might be like, you know what, I don't know. Now that I'm considering it more fully and I'm taking more information into account, or maybe another person told me the same thing, I might change my mind. I don't know, right? Or I could do a little self-inquiry to really check whether my response is kind of a flexible mind response rather than a fixed mind response, and choosing to decline it. And if I realized I was a little in fixed mind when I made that decision, I might choose to reconsider it, be a little more open. Or let's say I ran the matter by somebody I trust and they were like, you know what? I don't know, maybe you should give it a try. So maybe I'll reconsider. Okay, so it doesn't have to be no forever. But you know, sometimes you still would decline. All right. So accepting the feedback. So if you get a score of 5 or higher, you should probably accept the feedback, you know, and at least give it a try. All right. So if that's the case, we're going to proceed to the T and the S of ADOPTS. So we've been on O for a long time, right? Okay, so let's keep going. Oh, I'm sorry. T and the S. Yeah. Okay. I got a little. We're on the P. Boy, we've been on this for a while, haven't we? Okay. So try out the new behavior. Okay. So I'm deciding I'm going to accept the feedback, and now I'm going to say, all right, I'll give it a try. Okay. So you got to give it a full chance. You can't just say, I'll try it once and then if it's not going my way, I'll stop. Okay. Sometimes you really have to try it out for real. Okay. Without judging it. Okay. So if someone tells me I shouldn't be complaining, like the example I gave before, I shouldn't just have one conversation and not complain and say, that wasn't as fun. It's more fun to engage with people when I'm complaining about stuff. And then we just like kind of make fun of people or whatever. All right, I got to do it consistently and see what it's really like. Okay. All right. So practice it over and over. Give it a fair shot. Be open to it. If it's not something you can do right away, you could also try rehearsing it in your mind. Okay. So let's say, you know, it's a social skill and you don't have to be in a social situation to try it out. You could try it out mentally first. Imagine yourself in the situation. Imagine doing the big 3+1, for example, or something like that, right? So you could kind of rehearse it first. All right. And another thing you could keep in mind from lesson 5, all the way back in lesson 5, flexible mind varies. Okay, so if the feedback is to try something new, all right, that you're not really comfortable doing, it's a little novel for you, you could try that skill for engaging in novel behavior, right, and help you be more open to expanding your behavioral repertoire. All right. Okay. S, finally. Okay. So self-soothe and reward yourself for being open and trying something new. All right. So not easy to do that, right? This was difficult. Had to sit through this difficult feedback, listen, be open, try it out. Good for me. All right. So give yourself props for giving it a shot, right? And this whole process is not easy. So definitely reward yourself, whether it's just like giving yourself some positive self-talk or actually doing something pleasant, treat yourself to a coffee or something like that, or go out and take a walk in the park, or give yourself a break and watch a fun show on TV instead of the news, right? Well, whatever it is to you. Okay. And also just remember, sometimes it's hard to accept feedback because when you realize they're right with their feedback, you realize that you might have been doing something wrong. Oh, we hate to admit that, right? God, I was doing it wrong for so long. How could I be so stupid? Like, how did I not know this before? How was I so ignorant, So don't beat yourself up for not knowing, right? We can't always know everything right away. Sometimes we got to go through some stuff. We got to mess up a little. Someone has to come along and tell us, we weren't doing something that useful. And then we learn, all right? So it's not the worst thing in the world to say, all right, I was down the wrong road and now I have to turn around and do something else. All right, so just forgive yourself for that, all right? And you find yourself, again, ruminating about everything, just try to practice self-enquiry to open yourself up and not get too stuck and closed into your ruminating about it, all right? Lighten up a little bit, right? We got to lighten up and not make it too big of a deal. Okay, so here's the final review, putting all the pieces together. So first, we got to acknowledge the feedback's occurring, right? So we have to be aware, mindful of the fact that we're having feedback. D, we're going to check in with ourselves, describe and observe our emotions, body sensations, and thoughts. So we see how we're reacting if we're getting closed, okay? And if we're getting closed, that's okay. We could open to the new information, right? By cheerleading ourselves, encouraging ourselves to listen more fully, be receptive. P, right? Try to pinpoint exactly what they're telling us to do differently, right? Maybe clarifying with the person by dialoguing with them, asking questions, reflecting back. T, now that I'm clear about what it is, I'm going to try it out, right? And be fair about it, be consistent, see if it's actually helpful. And then S, self-soothe and reward myself for being open and trying something new. Give myself a pat in the back for giving it a whirl. Okay? So there you go. Flexible mind adopts. Okay? So getting your feedback on, all right? All right. So I hope this is useful to you guys. And remember, listening to feedback's the only way we grow, right? So thanks for listening and stay tuned for the next one. Okay? All right, bye for now, guys.